right. This first topic is 5 different topics.
It's not 5 different topics. It's one topic supported by 5 different pieces of evidence. I'm going to call this topic Joe Bonamassa is a troll.
Yeah.
Because that's my case against Joe Bonamassa.
So basically, do you think... Okay, so we've talked about Joe Bonamassa on this show before. We frequently call him other things like Joe Bonamoso and Joe Bananarama. And
I realized today that I don't actually know how to actually spell his name.
Which is problematic because I don't really edit your captions anymore.
I was trying to find these articles where he has like these hot take quotes that blow up the internet. I was like, I don't think I'm actually spelling his name right. I need to look how to spell his name.
All right, here's what I want.
Okay.
I want to go see, because I think the visual is the best part. I want to go see a cover band, a blues cover band in Hillcrest called Joe Bonamassa.
Bonamassa. For those that don't know, Hillcrest is our like LGBTQ part of town in San Diego.
I mean, these days, all of San Diego is boners the LGBT.
Boners can be cis male and
they can be
cissexual.
They can be,
is that the way to describe it?
They could be anything, but I feel like that is the application where it would be the best.
It'd probably get the biggest audience.
Anyway, this first quote. So the thing with Joe Bonamassa is he always has like a quote. And even if he's actually right, like most of the time, if you read the entire article, you're like, oh, he's kind of right.
Right. But I mean, well, the articles themselves are like tame and rational.
But there's always some opening statement. So
I think it's intentional. I think like I think he comes up with the hot quote first, where he's like, I'm gonna come out and say that people who play pedals are lazy, and then I'm gonna come up with a really like subdued, like rational article to just wrap around it. Because my theory is that because these things come out like almost regularly. It seems like they come out like every 2 or 3 months.
Yeah.
I think he's on a media schedule where he's like, I got to keep like a new article in the news like get people to keep looking me up. And these
literally there was one in February and there was another one like a week ago. So that's like exactly 3 months apart.
The Music Radar articles all have links to his albums and stuff like that.
Right.
They're advertisements.
Oh, there was also one. So there's October 2018, February 2019, May 2019. So that's pretty close to being on that 3 to 4 month schedule.
He's on a schedule with these. I think it's intentional. I think he's intentionally coming out with these hot take, like articles to do a marketing thing.
Yeah. Which one of these? Do we want to read all of them?
Let's go through them all.
All right. So the first one that you've got listed here.
We don't need to do them in detail, but we can riff on them.
I'll just read some of them are just a single quote. So this first one is pedal users are fucking lazy, says Joe Bonamassa. This next one is, and then he goes on to say like, well, if you're spending all your time like, tweaking pedals and whatever, like you are trying to chase like that perfect tone. Well, you could have just invested all that time in like actually learning how to play, which
right. But he's also in that one. To be fair, I mean, I feel like we're giving him too much of a benefit of a doubt starting out. To be fair, he was digging at people who are like noise musicians, and like ambient musicians and stuff like that. People who aren't doing, electric guitar into hot amp blues rock.
Yeah.
So he was taking a bit of a dig.
The one back in February was Joe Bonamassa thinks you don't need a lot of money for great sound. Says Paul Reed Smith is just another corporate guy now. Which isn't even what he actually says about Paul Reed Smith. What he actually said. Okay, so what he actually says about Paul Reed Smith.
The article is basically him saying what everyone else has been saying for years. Like, oh, you can sound really good with like an affordable guitar and like a Hot Rod Deluxe.
Yeah.
Like, Joe, we all know that. You're the one who needs to realize that because you're the one with $500,000 vintage Les Pauls and Dumbles and things like that. We all know that a Hot Rod Deluxe sounds just fine because that's what we can literally afford.
But it's so funny because the thing makes it sound like it's going to be Joe versus Paul Reed Smith. But what he basically says is what Paul himself has said, which is, he says, I mean, even Taylor and PRS are, quote, the man now, where Paul used to be the messiah for the boutique crowd. Now he's just another corporate guy because he isn't in his garage anymore. And Paul has said the same thing. Yeah, like, paraphrasing what I've seen him say in interviews is basically, yeah, I used to make this stuff in my garage and people and it was like a one-man thing. Now I make them like in a shop.
Yeah.
They're still made to the same standards. They're still
Probably
super
better
high
standards.
Yeah, they're still super high quality.
I mean, talking to
But-
Bob Taylor, he's like, yeah, stuff is better now that I have other people building it for me.
So, and in this one, he the thing is when you read like the full thing, it even seems like he has a sense of humor about himself because he's
Sure.
like,
I think he
oh
does.
yeah, I don't think you need a big pedal board to sound good. Coming from the guy, of course, this is coming from the guy who owns Dumbles.
Right.
The one most recently was when did the electric guitar become such a pariah? Which the whole thing is like, oh, don't wear in-ears, just crank it.
The problem I had with that article is that he's literally just spending the whole article trashing on sound people.
Right.
And my stance has always been, those are the people you need to be nice to. Like, don't freaking piss off the sound people. They'll mute you.
Yeah.
Don't be an asshole. Don't you want your signal to come through?
I also wonder how many venues exist where when you walk in, like the first thing that happens is the sound guy's like, "Oh, here's your ears, dog."
Yeah.
Like, is that a thing?
No, it's not. Not for people playing at our level, anyways. And that's the other thing is like the assumption of the article is that people are being forced to use in-ears. I use in-ears at church. It's my choice. I could request a wedge if I wanted to.
I don't think I could request a wedge.
Sure.
I mean, maybe I could.
It's different.
I wouldn't even want, I've gotten so used to in-ears
Yeah.
that I wouldn't even want to.
I mean, and
That's just me.
he's making a point that's going to be very attractive to, for lack of a better term, old timers
Yeah.
that, want to be purists and want to be like, oh, back in my day, we had full stack Marshalls and we could feel the wind off our amps and stuff like that. And are, pining for that experience and
Right.
nostalgic for that experience. I get it. I love being in a room with my amp turned all the way up too. It feels amazing. But it's like, I can't do that every week. I can't do that every month. I wouldn't be able to hear anymore. That's like special treat only.
Yeah. So this kind of spins off of his whole like diss on boutique guitars. Is he says the worst thing you can do after buying the headline, the worst thing you can do after buying a guitar you love. Actually, he says this. This was an interview with John Bollinger, is he Premier Guitar?
I don't know.
I think he's the guy from Premier Guitar, but he says if you purchase a new guitar, the worst thing you can do is he says if you like the guitar or like the worst thing you can do, it just all got. Let me
Steve, can you talk right tonight?
No.
Can you put together a sentence, please?
This basically paraphrased all down to the people saying, well, Joe Bonamassa says you shouldn't modding your guitars is dumb.
Right.
But what he's really said is like, effectively, like, don't buy a guitar already thinking like, oh, I'm going to buy this,
As a
this
modding
guitar
platform.
as a mod platform. If you already like everything the guitar does, you don't need to modify anything. Like if you're happy with a Jazzmaster stock, you don't need to buy a Mastery just because everyone else has a Mastery.
I think you could, in my mind, you could file that under people who keep changing out the trim block and their Strat.
Right.
I need to get a bigger brass block. I need to get a bigger brass block. I'm going to try a steel block now.
Well, and
it's like, have you ever been happy with this guitar? Maybe it's not the block. Maybe it's the guitar.
Right.
That's the problem.
Or, even more so, like if you like the guitar as it is and you don't have anything like intentional that you're fixing,
right,
then you don't need to do anything.
But it's such like a if you're happy, you're not going to do anything. Are people out there who are happy with their guitar doing stuff? I think a few.
I think a lot of people are.
A few people are, but I mean,
I think a lot
of my counter argument is like messing with the guitar is part of the fun for a lot of
Sure.
people. It's not
Sure.
just like, oh, I have to have a guitar just so that I can play guitar, and if it's functional, then why would I mess with it? For a lot of people, messing with the guitar is a huge part of the hobby. And most of us, the vast majority of us, are doing this as a hobby. We're never going to be playing professionally the way Joe is.
I think my favorite quote that you pulled was, there was a rumor that I was buying Gibson. It circulated around the internet, and I just go, how well off do you think I am? I play blues rock for a living. It's like a vow of poverty, and I'm like, how am I gonna buy a guitar company?
If you want to turn people on like their opinion on Joe in a hurry, then you do the vow of poverty quote.
Yeah.
Like if people are defending him at all, it's like, oh, and hey, you got to respect this guy. He's taking a vow of poverty, guys. 'Cause
Yeah.
if you know anything about Joe, he's just got a pile of vintage Les Pauls. He's got, he's probably owned every Dumble that's ever been made.
I think
like
on
that
his
at
like
some point
most
in his
recent
life.
tour, the cheapest seat available anywhere on any of his tour stops was like $130.
Yeah. But then, like, I kind of get what he's saying too. You got to think about his perspective,
Right.
Where it's like he's a musician that fills big venues, and if he's looking around at people that he might consider his contemporaries or his peers, he's looking at P Diddy or something like that. He's like, oh, there's another professional musician in this century that is making tons of money. That guy could probably afford to buy Gibson. I can't afford to buy Gibson. I'm only a multimillionaire.
Do we know what the buyout on Gibson wasn't it like in the billions?
Probably
Like low billions
I
or
have
close
no
to
idea.
billion?
I have no idea.
Was there a buyout or like the estimated value?
But he's probably looking at other people in his industry
Right.
that do have a ton of money and could do stuff like that. It's like, but Joe could still do something and become an investor in Gibson.
Yeah, and I think
like a major investor.
I think that would have actually been a.
It's not like if I wanted to invest in Gibson, I can barely afford to buy a Gibson guitar. That's my level investment.
When people said, oh, Joe Bonamassa should buy Gibson, like obviously, I was like, as a rational human being,
what that's like is like saying Harrison Ford should buy LucasArts because he's Indiana Jones.
Yeah,
it doesn't make any sense.
Not because he's Han Solo.
No, because he's Indiana Jones.
But the flip side,
which character do you think would do a better job running LucasArts? Han Solo would just sell it first port he got to. Indiana Jones would lock that up in a museum.
How are either of those better situations?
I think most people would prefer to have the original trilogy
if it's locked up in a museum.
If
it's locked up in a museum, doesn't that mean nobody gets to enjoy it ever again?
Yeah, that means George can't go in there and fiddle with
stuff. But neither
anymore.
can anyone else.
Yeah, that preserves it forever.
You don't want Han Solo to fly around in LucasArts?
Gibson doesn't belong in Guitar Center. It belongs in a museum.
No, so what I actually was thinking about though was you see it a lot in sports where a former professional athlete that is like well known and like has like relatively goodwill with like the locale will become like a 1% investor and the face of the investment team. So that was a thing like in Los Angeles, Magic Johnson was like the face of of the Lakers, and he was like the face of a purchasing deal for the Los Angeles Dodgers. Derek Jeter somehow, even though he played for the New York Yankees, became like the face of a purchase for the Miami Marlins. Like you see this kind of stuff all the time.
And I imagine what that does is it drums up more support from people who also have big money but aren't public figures.
Right.
And they're like, oh, that guy's investing. I'm a fan of him. I want to get in on this.
Yeah. Well, it's the same reason like
if Joe said, guys, I'm going to start together a thing where I'm, investing in Gibson to have part ownership of it and be able to sit on the board and stuff like that. I need to have 100 other millionaires jump in with me.
Right.
He could probably make something like that happen.
Yeah. No. And that's exactly what I would imagine it comes down to.
Because
and also,
that's his main audience.
He becomes
millionaires.
And again, he also becomes the face of drumming up investments, where he's going in and be like, look, like, here's my Gibson guitar collection. Clearly, I'm qualified to give advice on the direction that Gibson is running. Now, I realize like not everyone would agree with that. I don't know that I necessarily agree with that.
Sure,
but I'm saying like that is a pitch that he can make to put other potential investors, I am not.
I'm not a Joe fan or anything like that, but I can admit that he probably would have done a better job at the helm than the last CEO of Gibson, because at least he would kind of get what people like about Gibson versus trying to come up with some sort of futuristic turd
Right.
with a bowling ball finish, you know. So I guess that's been our takedown of Joe Bonamassa.
This time.
Oh man, 60 cycle hum 1, Joe 0.
Bring it.
Roasted. I mean, we don't. There's no point in us like criticizing him as a musician. He's obviously a talented guitarist.
It just definitely seems like he's engaged in the same kind of marketing that we are also engaged in, but
Oh,
he has
no.
a much larger audience than we do.
Game recognized game, Joe. Game recognized game. I see exactly
Did
what you're
that
doing.
just become Joe Bonamassa 1, 60 cycle hum 1?
No, but I'm saying like I'm in the business of making content that I want people to click on.
Right.
Joe is doing the exact same thing. He's making content that he wants people to click on so that they remember that he exists, so that he stays in, their forethought. It's brand recognition. You know, it's a reason why McDonald's runs commercials. Everyone knows McDonald's exists, but it's just brand recognition. They're like, we got to keep you on the tip of your brain, so you always just McDonald's is just there a little bit, you know.
Yeah. Joe Bonamassa, the McDonald's of musicians.
Steve said it, not me.
All right.
I agree with him. But...
Let's move on to our next ad. This was sent in by John Kaysen.
I mean, McDonald's delivers a